Network Entertainment.
And welcome to my podcast, the RJ Ledesma Podcast. In my podcast, I love to speak to entrepreneurs, business owners, and visionaries to learn more about how they think about doing business, what are their success secrets, and how we can replicate them in our own businesses and even in our own lives. Today, I have a friend who goes way, way back. Thanks again, Mr. Joseph De Leon. Joe, thanks so much for being part of the podcast.
Privileged to be here, RJ.
So, Joe and I have known each other for many, many years. Ever since high school, we were actually debaters, but in opposing debating teams. And, like many of in our time who were in that community, we become fast friends. And eventually, Joe and I have been together in religious communities, in startup communities. You become a very good friend, my friend and the friend of the family. So, Joe, it's really a pleasure to have you over here in the podcast. Before I start, now you like me, you wear many hats and just as many heads, I think, sometimes for yourself. But in a nutshell, if you were to describe yourself in an elevator pitch to people, what exactly does Joseph De Leon do?
Sure. So my name is Joseph De Leon, and as RJ said, I do wear many hats, but all those hats actually point in the same direction, right? I found that my mission in life is really to help founders and businesses become as valuable as possible without compromising on their values. So at the enterprise level, I'm a partner at an M&A advisory called Gravitas Prime.
And for those who might need to take a step back and explain what M&A means.
Sure. So M&A means mergers and acquisitions. So my firm was responsible for helping sell some brands you might know and love. Yellow Cab, Red Ribbon, Goldilocks. And for those in your international audience, they might appreciate that our firm is actually a spin-off from a larger Silicon Alley bank called Hambrick and Quist. And if you don't know them, you might know some of the brands that they helped set up: Apple, Amazon, and Genentech. And currently, our firm is the buy-side advisor. So we help a Japanese-based private equity fund find opportunities here in the Philippines. So if you know someone that has a business that's $3 million EBITDA and above, we can help them secure $5 to $30 million for about half their company. And then they and the Japanese partner can exit in a few years together.
Fantastic.
And we're also I'm going to take a breath because it's a long thing, the Philippine collaboration partner for Anderson Global in investment banking, M&A, and valuation. And so that's what we do at the global, regional, and the large scale level. But what happened was that I got into that from a background in about 10 years of advertising and strategy in Kuala Lumpur. And after 10 years, I woke up and said, oh my God, it's been 10 years. I can't stay here because I'll end up marrying a Muslim woman and giving my mom a heart attack. So I decided to come back home, enjoy my midlife crisis properly. And after that, that's when I got into deciding that I wanted to be a consultant in the region. And when I told my dad about it, he pulled out his biggest English and he said, son, I'm glad you're done gallivanting. It's time for you to join the firm and bring in new blood. So that's how I got into mergers and acquisitions.
Interesting story.
Through nepotism. And so I realized...
You're one of the original Nepo babies.
I'm one of... I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But after a while, I realized that I did have a fair skill set that was a match, because whether I'm selling a billion cookies to the women in China for Oreos or trying to sell a factory to one billionaire, it's just target market of one. But I really didn't have a full insight on the mindset of my clients, right? Because I'm crazier than I'm rich or Asian. So I figured I can't buy an entire company, but I can lose a few $1,000s on a startup. And so I was looking for my network that would a community that would help me fulfill that. And I met a few individuals who already started Manila Angel Investors Network. So I was member number 6. And then in the first deal that I syndicated, I tripled the membership. The startup didn't work out, but the friendships have endured. And now we're the largest, most active angel investor network in the Philippines. And after doing that for a few years, I got to mentor startups all over the world. So I've had the privilege of being invited to mentor startups from Switzerland to Samoa, Kazakhstan to Kuala Lumpur. Next week, I'm being flown to Lahore, Pakistan to look at some investment opportunities there. So it's been a hell of a ride. And so because I've been doing that, I realized that there's a gap in the market between startups to M&A. And I told my brother, balang araw, I'll help these guys, right? And so I started my own private consulting firm called Bullet Day
From Balang Araw.
from Balang Araw.
Uh,
And so I do two things, right? Since I'm seeing all these great technologies from all over the world and these great opportunities, I want to bring them into the Philippines and Southeast Asia. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is, again, there's so much capital in the world market that is itching to be deployed in somewhere useful. And the Philippines is a good space for that. Unfortunately, a lot of our business people are too efficient. And so they need to do restructuring to accept institutional investments. So I help them prepare so that they can take money from serious investors, right? And then because I've been doing this, the last thing I think that I've added to my plate this year is I've agreed to become the co-director for Founder Institute. So for those who already know, Founder Institute is the world's largest pre-seed accelerator. So they have over 200 chapters all over the world. They've raised $1.8 billion collectively over the decades, and they've helped more startups get off the ground than any other group in the world. And so I wanted to make sure that that resource was still available, was continued to be available for our Filipino founders. And I was able to successfully negotiate with Google Cloud so that we're the first and only founder institute in Southeast Asia where when you complete our program that starts in September and ends in December, every graduate founder is given $25,000 in Google Cloud credit for free.
wow, wow.
So that's our way to really help jumpstart these founder success.
Yes, and wearing my hat as the business manual editor, very happy that the you were one of the judges actually of our Growth Con where we had the college startup pitch, and one of the winners there was Clinieview.
Yes.
And they were the ones who got the $25,000.
So they have a scholarship to join the program. So we're looking
Fantastic.
forward to seeing them
Great.
complete their enrollment and join us in this cohort or the next one when they're ready.
Fantastic. That was a whirlwind way, and really, I loved it. You know, I thought I had a hard time describing what I did, but then I like that you were able to tell a whole story over there, and we can see your own little journey as an entrepreneur or a business and finance entrepreneur over there. What's interesting is that I need to take a step back because some people coming here for the first time are experiencing some, I guess, some terms which I've never heard before. And
Sure.
especially when people are interested to say, I want to do a startup. And I need investors, right? But let's go back a bit more. You were talking about what is pre-seed for people who don't know when it comes to the investment, when it comes to investing in startups, and what exactly is an angel investor for people who might not be as aware as well. I hope you don't mind me going back to 101 over
and,
here.
And thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
I think I hang around with so many fancy schmancy people. Sometimes I forget that a lot of this BS doesn't mean anything, right? So pre-seed is basically just a stage of investment. So basically what happens is when you're starting a business on your own, right? And you don't need money from anyone else, none of these terms matter,
Yes.
right? If you're able to build your business and, no offense to my angel investor and VC friends, if you're actually able to build your business, secure enough cash from your customers and grow it on your own and scale up, that is fantastic. On this journey, I was able to make friends with a guy who just wrote a book called Scale Up Faster, Pete Martin. And it's basically the good to great for businesses that didn't seek external funding. So if you're able to do that, that is the great way to grow the value of your business. And that just be built to sell so that when you retire and your kids don't want it, right, we can talk about that then, right? So basically, you start with whatever you've got. And then when you start asking and you realize you need help from outside,
Like financial help from outside.
financial help from outside, you can ask for what's called pre-seed capital, which is just a small amount of capital from your friends and family, right? And then once you've established that, then you can start looking for more serious investors like angels, and we'll go up to what's called a seed round. So basically, a seed round is just what it sounds like. We're giving you just enough capital to plant the seed to help you turn your business into something that can capture a much larger market. Like when you start your business, you have this crazy idea and you're working on all these opportunities. At some point, you realize some of these things can be put together and there's a strategic opportunity that's worth pursuing. And so you lose a lot of money trying to figure that out and turn your projects into a product that you can start selling. And so once you've got that sort of nailed down, um, once you've built it, it's not like the movies. Once you build it, they don't necessarily come. You have to
Yes.
actually work to get to them, or do something crazy to get them to come to you. And sometimes that takes money, or that takes attention, or that takes strategic partnerships. And so that's an appropriate time to get seed capital from pre-seed to seed capital from external investors to help you fund that transformation.
Got that. So just to help out people, and as we can see, you can take them through the whole journey. If people were listening over here at Joe's background, and we were talking about this offline earlier on, he can take you from the ideation, or when you create the idea of the startup and you're incorporating it, all the way to when that startup is up and running, and maybe you've got a few clients and you need some financial backing to grow it. It's there. And then scaling, meaning to grow the business. And we'll discuss this a bit more so people get a better appreciation of when you say scale, what exactly does that entail when you scale a business? You're there as well. And finally, to the point that the business is big enough and they want to sell, you go to mergers and acquisitions. And what Joseph does is takes you throughout that whole journey. Now, I want to take a step back and look first at the journey of from the perspective of the entrepreneur. And so there's pre-seed and seed capital. In the minds of a Filipino startup company, what amount is like pre-seed and then seed? What would you think it is?
So I think this is a variable amount, right? Because at an informal level, it's whatever it takes to get you to the next level, right? So basically, the first round of funding should come from your own resources, and from the people that you know and trust.
Friends and family, basically.
Friends and
almost, right?
family and fools. I mean,
Okay.
that's the official term,
Yeah.
right?
FFF.
FFF,
Yeah.
right? And the reason that's there is because basically, if you can't convince your mother who loves you to give you money, why the hell should I give you money, right? Because we know that this game or this process, a lot of it relies on the compelling narrative that the founder is able to deliver, right? And if the founder is not good at being able to sell his story, then even if he has a great product, it can still die on the vine. It's really unfortunate but true that in the world today, the best product doesn't always win. But usually the best known product is the one that wins the market. So your ability to make yourself known and know that and communicate the value of your business is super important, because that's your job, not the job of the person investing in you.
Got that.
Right? So the amount can vary, but just for a frame, at the level that we operate at, for Manila Angel Investors Network, our checks range from a collective 50 to 250,000 US dollars.
Okay.
Because we're looking for businesses that have an ambition to be market leaders, ideally not just in the Philippine market, but have some ambition to scale at least to the Southeast Asia level. Because as investors, we're trying to increase our fortunes and make a large impact for every peso or dollar that we're putting in.
Got that.
Right.
Oh, why do so from pre-seed? It's like sort of like here's the FFA for family, friends, and fools, and then when you've a bit of enough, you've developed what they call maybe you've got some customers already. Then you can go to Manila Angels Investors Network for a bit more money, between 50 to 250 US dollars. No, why exactly are they called? I think it's important to understand for people why are you called angel investors? Why are there devil investors? I mean, for the people who don't know, so they understand.
Let's be upfront, right?
Yeah.
Not every angel investor is a great angel, and you have to remember, Lucifer was also an angel.
That's yes, yes.
So, as founders, just because you meet someone that calls himself an angel investor, they're not always good people. We're human as well, right? And in the past, with unstructured angel investing, because the investors themselves didn't know and they built their fortunes on owning businesses, they're used to saying, all right, you've got a great idea. I'm going to put in the money to make it grow. So I should own most of it because it's my money. And in the old paradigm, in a small market that was controlled, and you had access to market dominance, that made a lot of sense. But the game we're playing now is actually a more global game. And so the thinking is, if you're an angel investor, even though you're giving a bulk of the capital, you're making a bet on this founder and the business. And instead of taking 80%, you discipline yourself. And instead of being short term greedy, you become long term greedy, right? So you end up constraining to owning only up to 20, twenty five
I see.
percent because later on, when you want to expand outside of whatever your area of control is, you need someone with a larger influence, more access to come in and write an even bigger check. But if you're the one that has the majority of the company, they're not going to
You're
write the
actually
check.
constraining. You're actually limiting yourself as the angel investor.
You're limiting your own growth and the
Yes.
growth of the founder because the outside investor knows you, even though you gave the money, you're not the one that's driving the business, right? Your money is replaceable. The founder and their work and their commitment to the vision, that's what's supposed to be more irreplaceable. And that's what they're making an investment in. So that's why we're called angel investors, because we're trying to think about this long term, and hopefully our capital gives you the wings to reach the next level and the next level
Got
and the
it.
next level, because it's a step by step process.
Very interesting. You actually gave some red flags right now as to what are the type of angel investors to look out for and those that you should work with. But having said that, for the people who are doing startup work, more or less, how do they know that this is the angel investment group, or this is an angel investor I should take in and I should not take in?
So I think there's a couple of things to look at, right? So obviously, I have to endorse Manila Angel Investors Network. So if you have a startup that has a paid customer, because our network is in a conservative market, so we have to adjust our criteria to suit our pool of investors. If you have a paying customer, then please send your 5-minute pitch deck to pitch@main.ph.
Okay.
And then we'll screen it, and then we'll talk to you about it and let you know, hey, here's what's missing to make it better. And then if it's good enough, you might be one of the 3 startups selected to present to our 100 plus angel investors every quarter. And then from there, you might find an angel investor or a strategic partner or an advisor to help you move your business further along. And the process is not a straight line. We've had a number of successful investments that actually were rejected multiple times, right? And took a few years until we were able to arrive at, hey, you know what? We think you're investable with us, right?
And do you help them along? So there's people who get rejected along the way. You don't just say, okay, bye. But you actually, some people actually mentor them in Maine to help them get to the point where they finally become more investable.
So in our screening process, we're very upfront about what we think works and doesn't work. And what we're also letting you know as a founder is that, just because we say this is what we think, we accept that we're not always right, right? Just because, and this is something I have to caution my other fellow angel investors with, because they're very successful in the businesses they've built, right? But sometimes they forget that they were able to arrive at that success through different paths with different levels of resources and in different circumstances and times, right? And so there's something about the market today and what's going on with technology and what's going on in the particular industry that we might not understand. And so we're always mindful that we'll give you advice and our thoughts, but we're always happy to be proven wrong in the face of facts,
I see.
right? And so in that process, we share our perspective. We do also do some mentoring, but because we're all volunteers, it's very hard to organize that in a structured way. And actually, that's why I also decided to take on being the co-director for Founder
I see.
Institute,
I see.
because that provides a structure where if a startup that I think has potential, but is missing a few things, can go through a program that will actually systematically guide them to go from a founder with a great idea to an incorporated and investable company. And it also taps into a pool of global mentors who are experts in whatever industry they're in. Because again, FI Founder Institute's been around for about more than a decade, and has really helped so many startups all over the world. And so that community is probably one of the largest, most relevant communities for startups and founders, right? And then from there, when they graduate, they also get access to the Founder Institute Investor Network, which lets them find other capital, right? So that's the structure. We'll give you advice based on the screening. Um, Periodically, when we have mentoring sessions, we'll invite people to come and we'll talk to them again. And then if not, we'll endorse them to Founder Institute for them to choose whether they want to go through the program to have a more formal, structured training and mentoring process.
Now, over the years, like you've gone through maybe hundreds or literally thousands of startups, both here and abroad. I want to sort of narrow the scope a bit and let's look at the Philippines. In Maine, when you've gone through hundreds of startups, can you share with us sort of like if there are any overarching themes or common denominators of startups which you will invest in because you've seen something from them, and how can we help other startups listening here right now to appreciate what you've seen as common denominators for success, or at least start them off with some seed capital?
Yeah, it's a great question, RJ. And so I think there's a couple of common denominators, highest common factors with the founders and businesses we've committed to support, right? I think first and foremost, it is the founder and the founding team in terms of whether they are a good bet. So a lot of times startups come and they do a 5-minute pitch and they spend 4 minutes talking about the market opportunity and the problem they're trying to solve. Unfortunately, we're not paying for the problem. We're making a bet on the solution. And so all these people have unfortunately done is pique my interest and get me psyched for the next guy that comes in with a better solution. So
I
the
see.
first and most critical thing is the management, right? Do they have the correct insight, commitment, character, and ability to execute, right? To get this done, because we're making a bet that you will be the ones to solve this problem better than anyone else. And then the second thing I think that's critical is they appreciate what's missing and what they need to do to get to the next level. And so their ask makes sense. So the math makes sense. They're asking for X amount of money to achieve this target in 2 years
To get to here.
to get to here, and it's clear and it's a reasonable target. I have a bias because I'm a marketing and strategy guy more than a finance guy. And so my back of the envelope math is always based on, if you want to reach this target, how many human beings will have to be convinced to actually buy your product, subscribe to your service, or become part of your network? And what's your CAC? What's your customer acquisition cost to get those people in that amount of time? And did you budget for that? Everything else, I let smarter people figure out. But that's the one I try to figure out. Because if you don't have a sense of, I want to get here and I don't know how to, and it's going to cost me this much, right? Then that tells me something about your business. For example, we had a startup that was so convincing, right? And they basically said, we're gonna capture the nursing market, right, from the Philippines, right? But the target economics to make it work was actually larger than the total number of nurses
Oh,
being
wow.
produced in the Philippines. It's like, actually, my friend, a 50-second calculation shows that your business model's unsustainable. So that, unfortunately, all that passion was worth nothing because the math didn't make sense. So, and then the last I think is that we need to know that these founders have grit, the commitment to finish and try to get it done. So unfortunately, we've had the experience to work with a lot of founders. There's one founder, for example, who was building this great startup, and she was helping people out in overseas foreign workers become more financially stable. But at some point, she realized, you know what? It's not working the way that she wanted it to work. She had capital, but she couldn't see a path forward. And it's a tough journey. And so she decided to, in her mind, do the honorable thing and close the business and return money to the investors, which I think is a fair decision, right? But she did this without consulting us as investors and having another conversation with us so that we can, better understand her thinking.
Or maybe even have her pivot the business, I guess.
And or find another way, right? Because for us, we're making long-term bets, and it's also a commitment in terms of her time and how she wanted to use her life, right? But as investors, what we would have advised is, you know what? Let's think about this and see what else we can do to not waste the opportunity. Because, we're happy to get our money back, right? But if you're an angel investor and you're really making multiple bets, what you're really gambling on, what you're really your portfolio thinking is that, you know what can this startup do to gain the upside? So it's actually like the parable of the talents, where you're saying, here, take my 10 seeds, take my 5 seeds, take my 1 seed, and like we don't want you to give the seed back, right? We're hoping that you will
Multiply
make
the
it,
seed. Yeah.
make it prosper.
5x, 10x.
Well, 5x, 10x it, right? And when we plant 100 seeds, we know some of those bets will die, but we accept that risk, right? And here's the unfortunate turn in that story, right? So after we found out that she wanted to let go of the business and she started already breaking up the assets and disincorporating, 2 weeks later, I got a message from the M&A guy from a large group that was actually looking to buy a business that she was in. So if basically what had happened, if the world was a little bit different, and when she was thinking about this, she reached out to us and had a conversation and waited 2 weeks, right? Before we did anything, she could have sold that company as a successful exit.
Wow.
And we as investors would have made 10 to 50x.
Your talents would have been put to good use.
The talent would have been put to good use because the seed that she planted was good. But she decided as a founder that this is not the garden she wanted to tend. And so she thought, all right, let's give it back. But again, she didn't. And again, there are sad stories where founders build something and they push it and there's really nothing there. And then it ends up being a big waste of time, money, and energy for all the people involved. So it's a tough call to make. I don't pretend that these are easy decisions to make. And I deeply respect that founder and the choice that they made for themselves, because ultimately it's their life. And like, we as outsiders or investors, we don't run your life, right? But we do hope that if you made a commitment to see this business through, that you'll see this business through.
Sa 100 tanong, meron akong 1,000,000 sagot at minsan mas marami pang tanong. This is Kuya Kim and I'm thrilled to invite you to my podcast under the Pod Network, Ano Ba Talaga? With me, Kuya Kim Atienza, also powered by Memo Plus Gold. Kung may gusto kayong malaman, matutunan o madiscover na bago, makinig na kayo sa podcast na to. Marami akong mga guests, topics, trivia, and revelations on this show. Ang masisiguro ko sa inyo, you'll always learn something new. Just search for Ano Ba Talaga with me, Kuya Kim Atienza, on Spotify and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Maybe you can share also right now, so that for the appreciation of the people listening, some of the more successful from Maine that came out that so that they know, oh, here's a case study. This one I really liked how it came to us, and this is where it went. So and you were happy with it. And maybe another one where you share, okay, it didn't work out, but they fixed it up, they came back, and then now they came back, they got invested into, and now they're doing fantastic. Let's talk about the first one.
Sure. So I think we've been lucky and blessed because we're the first and we're the most active angel investor network in the country now, right? And so what happens because of that is that there are opportunities that become available from established funds, right? That are looking in a business, and then they want other investors to complete the round, but they don't want a competitive institutional investor, and so they approach us. Or um, there's high-profile angels that want to support the startup that they've made the initial investment in, and then basically they want to tap into our network to help improve the net worth of their
I see. I
investments,
see.
right? And so one of the landmark deals that we were able to successfully make because of our network was with Kumu,
Okay.
right? So when we came in, it was really just early stage, and only a few angels had come in, high profile angels had come in. They opened up the round, and so we were able to uh, put together a small group and make a small investment. And then fast forward a few years later, we have large capital coming in from the U.S. That values the company at a much larger amount. Um, as the situation evolves, right? They haven't been able to do a full exit yet, but they're now operating at a level that's much higher strategically and financially than they were when we put the money in. So, given that we came in at such a low price, we're still far, far ahead. We're still very much in the black on that business. The sad reality is, of course, that I can't go to McDonald's and say, "Hey, get me a Big Mac meal," and I'll because I own shares in Kumu, so I still can't get food from that. But at some point, assuming things keep going the way they're going, that should turn out very well for our angel investor network, right?
Fantastic. And how about one of those that you've turned down before, but because they were able to pick up from all the inputs that you guys gave them, they came back to you and you said, okay, good to go.
My two favorite ones are One Export, Zendi's,
Mel Nava,
Mel Nava, and the Humble Sustainability, Joseph
Joseph Worker.
Worker,
Yeah.
right? So when they first came to us, they had a great core idea, but from a business perspective, we respectfully disagreed with the approach or the structure that they were taking. Um, and I'm not saying it was because of our advice alone, and I'm sure that they talked to other investors who also told them no. And they, in their own experience, established, what, maybe there's a better way to do this. So for Mel Nava, it was about the structure of her company, and how she was going to use the funds. And we said, actually be better if you deployed for growth and postpone repaying your past investors to later because everyone will benefit. For Humble Sustainability, their initial concept was B2C. And we didn't see that as scalable because it's very expensive to break into the market to reach customers directly, right? And so we recommend a B2B model. So they came back to us a few times with some changes to their business. And at some point, it did eventually make sense where for One Export, they were already able to refine their offering and build enough scale. And they agreed with the call, I think, at some point that, they will continue to put the funding into growth rather than repaying old investors and then keeping them on board and then just letting new investors in. And then now they're able to scale across Southeast Asia, right? For Humble, what happened was they pitched, we declined, we asked them to pivot. They tried, and then they eventually agreed to the B2B pivot. They pitched again, and actually at that point, when our members were investigating and looking into it, the math wasn't working out. So we declined to invest even then. But one angel investor did step in and make a call. I'm going to work with these guys. Unfortunately, that super angel, Richard Eldridge, was really able to help them very closely in terms of guiding where they can go and help them find a new niche, which is basically focus on B2B, but really on the e-waste of big corporations and companies. So it becomes a very tight proposition so that they can build one solution around that one group of customers. And then we were able to come in, and then other institutional investors came in at around that same round. Our simple advice for them was, if that's what you want to do, then you want to actually actively participate and engage with the business community. So we recommended, join Manila Business Club.
So you can
join this
get
group.
all these large
So that- so-
institutional clients, I
as
guess.
people who know you, right? Because one of the elements for success when I mentor or train people is that if you actually want to build a case, right? There are four ends in terms of moving people, right? And that first big end is the narrative, right? What's the story? Before us, here's what is going on. Here's our insight, our analysis, and here's what we're doing. So after us, here's the result, right? TV commercial, right? Before and after story, right? Then the next piece is the names, right? When you're coming into the market, unless you're RJ, most people don't know you, right? So they have to trust. You have to anchor on a brand name that people already trust, so that they'll be able to say, okay, yes, I don't know you, but I do know them, right? So maybe these guys know what they're talking about. And generally that wins people's hearts, right? So they've made a psychological decision to say yes. But in the modern business world, as with anything, normally it's not just one person that makes a decision. They have other people that they have to run that by, either up or down the food chain. And so you need numbers, right? For a rational support to anchor and prove that, right? And then the last piece is the narrator. So, you can have a great startup with all these wonderful pieces, but if you, as the person telling the story, aren't good at telling the story, or come across as not credible or not trustworthy, or basically someone people don't want to work with, then, people will let go of that opportunity. We had this one startup that was brought to us by one of our angels that was in a great market. They had a great solution. They had a great team, which is quite inspiring that he was able to recruit this great team because he was quite brilliant. But the founder was a royal jackass. And so every minute that we spent in that session or discussion with him, we wanted to spend no more time with him. And we realized, if you're going to make an investment, it's a 10-year commitment, right? Depending on how long it takes for things to turn around or take off. And so we realized, even though this is a potentially large opportunity, this is a human being that we didn't enjoy spending time with, and we weren't comfortable collaborating with. And so we declined. And they're doing well. I mean, they're great business people, but for us personally, it wasn't a good fit, right? So for Humble and Joseph to go and be part of these groups, then he elevates his relevance as a narrator, because people then get to trust and know him as a human being and as a person. So for them to trust their business to him becomes a lot easier. So hopefully that strategy is helping them scale and grow and find new opportunities on a continuing basis, right? And build a funnel for him, so that basically when you know what you need to do, you prepare, right? But when you don't know what is going to happen next, you need to position. So hopefully by joining these networks, right, his business is better positioned to take advantage of the opportunities, because that's where the opportunities are. So he's embedding himself in a target-rich environment.
Got that.
So
Now, I really appreciate how we're able to take a look at companies or startups that have been going through you to get investments. But then, if you take a step back, and what you do in Founders Institute it's really helping founders, rethink basically what they're doing. And my formula oftentimes as an entrepreneur and entrepreneur mentor is always asking people, you have to step back and think about what problem is the business trying to solve, right? But I want to better appreciate now, with as Founders Institute, how are you helping founders? What are you seeing the most basic thing that founders should do to make sure that this is a business that can elevate eventually to go into those levels over here? What are the common denominators now of founded businesses or startups that you see are essential or important if they really want to become an ongoing concern?
the blessing and the curse of being a founder is that you're probably passionate and brilliant. And so the the fruits of that tend to be that when you're thinking about a problem deeply and broadly, you come up with a whole set of solutions to solve all the problems and all the related problems, and you're eager to tackle them all. Unfortunately, as a human being, we're not omniscient and omnipotent, so we can't have it all at once right now, right? So, one of the things we're trying to help our founders do during the Founder Institute process is really get to the one thing, right? What's the one problem you want to solve for one kind of customer with one kind of solution, and you reach them on one kind of channel, right? Because a lot of times when you don't have focus or discipline, you're just trying to try everything and then see what sticks. And we're not saying don't experiment. Don't get me wrong, right? But if you're constantly doing multiple things at once, it becomes harder and harder to build discipline in that process. Going back to my friend's book, Scale Up Faster, what he found was that the founders that were able to build their businesses faster and better and bigger than others didn't have multiple channels in terms of how they reach their customers and deliver, right? They had one core channel that they just made better and better and better and better until it was frictionless, right? They had one set of customers, so they were focused on their target audience, so they didn't have to spend, they didn't have wasted capital on marketing for people that would have a low relevance for what they had to offer, right? And so one of the things I try to teach personally for my clients and for my friends is I want them to rethink the way they look at target audience or target market. So we went to nice fancy schools and we had our marketing professors got paid very well to teach us about psychographics and demographics and all the ways to cluster your customers, right? But what I found in terms of practical, successful business people is that their use of target market is dead simple, right? Your target market is the group of people that's large enough to meet your needs and they're easy enough, but small enough to be easy to reach,
Okay,
right?
got that.
And for right now, right? And then the larger scale is when you have a better sense of your adoption curve. So you can say, all right, these are the people I have to reach now because they're going to be the influencers and cascade their decisions to a larger audience, right? So they help move you through the adoption curve until you can cross to an early majority, right? To help you get past that first 15% of your target market. So I think as founders, try to think about your solution in the most atomic level possible. Solve one problem for one customer cost effectively and in a way that you can scale so that you don't have to replicate your solution resource to match, right? So that at some point you don't need to throw one more salespeople for every one new customer, right? That you're going to be able to scale this with one source of solution. And then as the customers come, you can match the demand as it 5x's, 10x's, 100x's.
Got that.
Right?
Got that. I'm going to talk a bit more about the coming up with the solution, but before I get there, because it's very important that how you help refine companies. I want to go back about problem solving. Okay, because many people want to put up businesses and they don't realize that maybe the first step is always to solve some problem because a problem is always what's going to help bring money in. Diba? Your pain points become your business inspiration. In problem solving, what's the methodology that you think is the most important, or the way that people think about solving problems when they come to your founder? Because there's a problem I want to solve, but then how do you tell them how to solve this problem? Is it because it's a problem that's too small to solve, that people haven't solved well enough, that it's a problem that people haven't properly identified? Help us when you go through the process of talking to them.
Sure. So there's two, before we get into that, there's actually a more primary challenge, right? A lot of times founders come to us with a solution that's looking for a problem,
Okay. Yeah.
right? And then that's not necessarily a bad thing if you have a great solution. I mean, in classical terms, the landmark example of that, of course, is the Post-it, right? For those in the audience who probably heard about this before, when they invented the Post-it, the original idea was to make it wallpaper, right? But Post-its are crappy for wallpaper. But the guys in 3M, one of the guys in that R&D lab was in a church, and he had a songbook, and he realized he needed small pieces of paper to mark his songbook, right? And his use of that basically became the seed for Post-its, right? But the Post-it itself was already invented, but it was trying to solve the wrong problem. So happily, when I've met some startups that have these great solutions, I help them realize, hey, you know what? This doesn't solve your problem very well, but it'd be great for this other problem. The benefit of being an advisor to startups from all over the world is that as a founder, you're probably going to work on maybe 2 or 3 problems in your lifetime. As an advisor, a mentor, an investor, I see hundreds of problems, hundreds of potential solutions all over the world. And that's in my database of crazy things. And
Your AI, it's a Joseph Dalian AI over here.
So all right, hey, you know what? Maybe this thing will work better for that kind of opportunity, right? So that's the first thing. So if you got a solution that doesn't have a problem, hey, that's a great problem to have. Let's talk about it and see what you can solve for, right? And so using that as a core, right? What you're trying to see is based on that solution, what is it solving better than what's out there in the market? What job does that solution fill? Right? The other thing about problems is that a lot of times when people come to us, they only have a very shallow sense of what the problem is. They're not approaching it with deep insight. So let me give you an example of an investment I made and how that compared when I started to see what's out there, right? So I made an investment in a startup who was basically trying to solve the problem for hiring staff for their restaurants and hotels, right? Because back in the old days, you put a poster on the wall, right outside your shop,
For
and
hiring,
you put an ad in the classified ads, right? But in 2020, there's no newspapers anymore with classified ads. So what do? You go on social media, and for people that are professionals, we have LinkedIn, right? But for restaurant staff, there's no LinkedIn for restaurant staff. So they came and said, "Oh, we're gonna be the LinkedIn and Facebook for helping find jobs for these people," which is a great idea, right? And that seems like a great problem to solve. I made the bet, and things are going all right. But as I did my world tour that year to look at different startups, in every continent, I saw a startup that was looking at that same problem. And then I realized after the initial "ooh, that's exciting," how shallow that actually was, right? Because in terms of the actual mechanics of just building it and hope they will come, it really wasn't enough. Until I bumped into a startup in Cambodia where they said, "Okay, we're going to build the LinkedIn for blue-collar workers." And I was like, how boring. But then they went one step further. But that's not the problem we're actually solving. What they realized is the problem they're solving is this, that all these people were applying for these jobs, right? And in the interview got the jobs, but 70% of them didn't show up on the first day of work. And when the bosses were trying to call them, they were getting ghosted. So this group identified ghosting 5 years before it became a sexy term, right? And so they went and they did the insight, and then they realized here's what's happening. These people, much like here in the Philippines, when they're applying for these jobs, they're full of hope, right? And they get these jobs. but they don't have the money for the first day commute. But their game plan is, when I get the job, I'll figure it out. I'll borrow from my tito, right? I'll do something. And a lot of the times, on the day that they have to get that money, they don't have the money to get to work. And then they're just embarrassed. And so when the boss calls to try and catch them, they just hide because they don't know what to say. There's so much shame.
Great insight. Great insight.
And so we realized they're solving a different problem. They're not trying to solve the problem of getting people interviews or getting them jobs. They're solving the problem of getting people to work and get paid. And so they changed their business model. And they said, if you want to work with us, we will find you these people. But when they get selected, you will give them an advance on your portion of the first salary so that you're guaranteed that they'll have money to get to work.
Wow.
So a lot of times people are approaching or thinking about the problem, but they're not thinking about the problem all the way through, right? There's a book I read before. I think it's called The Art of Victory, where basically it's saying a lot of times people think about how to win the battle, but don't think about how to win the war. So when you're thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve, are you solving a problem at the level of the battle, or are you trying to solve a problem at the level of a war? And then the other thing in terms of solving the right problem, here's something I learned from my brilliant brother, Mitch De Leon, right? He helped me clarify that actually when you're trying to invest in a business, it's easier if the problem in the mind of the customers is a hair on fire problem, right? So they talk about, a vitamin versus a headache. My brother pushes it one level further, right? It's easiest to sell something when it feels like your hair is on fire. Because if it's a vitamin, you can skip it, right? If it's a migraine, you can put up with it. But if your hair is on fire, you have to put that goddamn problem out in that very moment.
I love that
right?
hair is on fire
So,
problem. Yeah.
If you're solving a hair on fire problem for that business and they know it and they're already looking for a solution for it and they're frantic and desperate, willing to pay almost anything to put that hair on fire, put that fire out, that's a great business problem.
I love that. I love that. Stepping back a bit more, no, and I know we discussed this earlier on as we start wrapping up this conversation, is that you're talking about solutions where you said that the best solution to have is when you start narrowing down the channels and the people that you want to talk to. Can you just give me one example where you had to do that with the Founders Institute, where you found, this is great, but if I keep on narrowing down and almost with a later focus, attack this one market with this one distribution, the business will grow.
Let me give you an alternative example, right? So I was actually mentoring a startup in Eastern Europe that wanted to, before the whole insanity, right? Bring vegetables from Ukraine into Western Europe,
Okay.
right? And they had this whole great fancy plan, right? And then I asked them one dumb question, right? Have you actually brought any vegetables from Ukraine to a target market, right? Have you actually
Done it before.
done it before? Have you gone and joined the delivery to take product A to market A, right? And then they said, no, we haven't, right? And said, so how do you actually know
It's going to work.
what the problem is, what's going to work, right? So before you get to the one thing, I actually want to make sure that you as a founder try the first thing or anything before you start coming up with all these great solutions, right? So another example of that is we had this great startup. It was a great founder who was trying to solve real estate sales. He said, why are all these sales agents on the street waving brochures trying to flag me down while I'm driving around Pasig? Right? There's got to be a better way to do that. And so the guy's from the US, smart guy. So he built what he thought was idiot-proof solution for real estate agents, right? In our angel network, we fortunately have a number of people that own real estate companies. So before investing, we said, guys, try it out for a few months, right? And then we were able to find out that actually the real estate agents are more idiots than idiot proof. So the solution didn't work, right? And so basically that's what I'm saying, before we get to figuring out the one thing, right? Try and test it and get real-time feedback, right? It's about the process, right? And then again, a great example of that one thing was for Humble Sustainability to start drilling down from trying to take care of all the sustainability problems all over the Philippines to business to business e-waste to business among top tier companies that have a lot of e-waste that they have to account for and distribute, so that they're presenting not just we'll take it off your hand solution, but also here's a way to measure and report back to your stakeholders how much carbon you're taking out of the environment, and fulfilling your sustainability goals for your shareholders, right? So that was drilling it down because they've focused on one customer and one thing. They can be specialists in getting that across.
Love that example. I better have Joseph Worker here.
You should.
In later episodes of the podcast. Joe, there's been so much that we tackled. It's almost an hour. I can't believe it. And
really?
We haven't even got a scale up just yet. I mean, and that just means that I have to have you back here on the podcast.
All right.
But as we start wrapping things up, I often ask the guests, maybe you can share from, because like your own background, you come from, you did MBA, you went advertising, you worked for the family, you worked for these different things. And finally now you're doing Founders Institute. If there was some, I guess, management or entrepreneurial advice in business and in life that you want to share with those still coming up and making their way in the world when it comes to business, maybe 2 to 3 key things. What do you want to share with those people?
That's a tough one. So I think before my dad passed, he shared one piece of strategy that really sticks with me, right? That when you're faced with multiple options and you don't know what to do, make the choice that gives you more options. So basically what he's saying, if you don't know what to do next, right? Do the thing that hopefully will give you more choices in terms of what you can do after that. Right? Then the other piece of wisdom that he shared with me, because he was able to build, the company from that he was a professional for into one of the very large local conglomerates, right? So he went from the mailroom to the boardroom of RFM, right? And I was asking him how he did that because I was doing my business school and trying to learn from him. And basically and at the time, we were very influenced by the Western idea of McKinsey and hire the best people, right? But, in the Philippines, for a small company, he didn't have that option, right? So what he shared was very, very powerful, right? For you to build a great organization, it's not always possible to start with extraordinary people. So the way to do that is to build systems and structures and tools and training so that your ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things.
I like that.
Right? And then the last is from a personal example. When I was in Malaysia and I realized I'd been there 10 years and I just gotten there by sheer momentum. And I realized, you know what? It's time for me to stop. So I quit my job without a job waiting for me. And I just had faith that, the universe would catch me. And really, sometimes you just have to let go and give it a shot and see where the world takes you.
And the world's taking you pretty far. So again, thanks so much for being on the podcast, Joe De Leon. Really appreciate it. Joe, we got to have you back here on the program. And for startups who want to start off, working with you or want to present to you or want to be part of the Founders Institute, let them know again where we can do that.
Sure. So if you're a startup founder with an idea but don't know where to take it next, please go to fi.co/Philippines. We've closed this cohort, which starts in September and ends in December, but we'll probably be doing one in Q1. And we'll probably be expanding to help take over Founder Institute for other Southeast Asian countries. So we might be the first to do an international cohort for Founders Institute in Southeast Asia for
Fantastic. And it's done
starting next
online
year.
or in face
So
to face?
we're going to be doing a hybrid solution this quarter where we'll have our opening session, middle session, and a closing session in person, but the other weekly classes will be done online so that we can have more people participate, but still have the benefit of engaging and meeting their other co-founders so that they can really get a sense of community, because really the success isn't just in the curriculum, it's really in the community that you build, and that starts with you and your other fellow founders, so that you
Got that.
know you're not the only ones in that
I often
journey.
say network is your net worth. That's perfect place to
Yep.
make that network. And finally, for the people who want to present to you, startups that want to present and look for angel investors.
So if you are a startup that already has a paying customer, we'll be happy to look at your business and share our thoughts. Please send your deck, your PDF deck, and your 5-minute video of your pitch to pitch@main.ph, and then you'll go through the screening process. It's scheduled by our wonderful and lovely team.
Okay. Again, Joe, thanks so much. And we'll see you again in the next episode of the RJ Ledesma Podcast. Thanks so much, guys.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.